Hi, my name is Jessica Tappana, and I'm a therapist with Aspire Counseling. Today, we're going to talk for just a few minutes about developing self-care habits while you're in college. College is, I think, a very unique time in a person's life, and a lot of what's happening right now is you're exploring who you are and who you're going to be in the future. You're making a lot of wonderful memories, but there's also a ton of stress. There's a lot of stress to adjust to living alone, to adjust to living with roommates potentially, figuring out who you want to be and what you want to do with the rest of your life. And often some of what you come up with may clash with other people in your life, whether it's professors or friends or family. So amidst all of the stress, it's a really good time for you to start developing some habits that will help you be resilient so that when you face that stress, you can come out on the other side hopefully even stronger than you were when you began to face whatever that stress is, whether it's a COVID-19 like random worldwide pandemic that causes your school to close unexpectedly or go online, or whether it's just, a good old fashioned argument with your mom. Whatever that stress is, I want you to have enough going on in your world to where you can face that stress confidently. And it really just begins with basic self-care habits. When I talk about self-care, a lot of people think that I'm going to tell you to take bubble baths and take mental health days from class. And those things can absolutely be part of your self-care plan. But if it is the only part of your self-care plan, then you can start to run into some problems. For instance, if the only part of my self-care plan is, hey, when I'm stressed, I, meet up with my friends for a drink. That might work well a lot of the time, but then if there's a worldwide pandemic going on, they close the bars at 10 and I feel really stressed at 11:30 at night, there's less that I can do. Or if all of my friends are quarantined or I'm quarantined, then now suddenly that outlet of going out with friends is going to be a lot less doable, right? So I encourage you to think about self-care from a more holistic perspective. One definition I really like of self-care is that it is creating a life that you don't have to escape, that you don't want to escape. And I think as a general premise, this is a really good way of looking at it, is like creating the life you want that feels good, that feels like you're able to be yourself, so that you are okay being more present in that life. And again, thinking about multiple areas. So some of those different areas might be physical. So creating like housing. I mean, if you think about my physical self-care, the space you see behind me is part of my physical self-care, right? I have like some fun sayings, something on the wall, like a little something to represent that I love to travel in this Paris thing, a live plant, an aloe vera plant. So like I've created a space that feels welcoming to me. So when you're decorating your apartment and you're putting the effort into like getting a really fun like pillow or putting some lights up or doing something to make that space your own, you're actually doing self-care. And so I encourage you to think about that physical space. Also, like sleep and eating are part of physical self-care that I think that we often forget about. And, or some people like that's their only thing, like running is my go-to self-care, and then they get a sports injury and they can't run. And so, but that may be part of your self-care, is exercising or eating healthy, or sleeping regularly, knowing what sleep is. Maybe for you, self-care is not scheduling classes prior to 10 a.m. in the morning because you know that you need to sleep in, that's the way your body works. So you purposely sign up for the class that starts at 10 and not the class that starts at 8 a.m. or whatever. Maybe all your classes start at 2 p.m. That's fine if you know about yourself that that's the kind of life you need to create. Emotional self-care, self-love and caring about yourself and working through anything related that's preventing you from having that relationship with yourself. I think of pets as an important emotional self-care. Maybe when you go home or go to a friend's house, you're cuddling with a dog, and that's part of your self-care. I know when I was in college, I used to say that like hanging out with kids on a bad day was part of my self-care. And so I worked at a daycare on purpose because that was part of my self-care. I loved watching kids learn and laugh. And I mean, they're happy no matter what happens. And so to me, that was part of my self-care. Now I have my own kids, so cuddling can be self-care or can not, depending. So your self-care also changes over the years. Personal self-care, setting goals for yourself, I think is an important part of self-care because that motivates you and helps you create that life that you want. Having hobbies, seeing friends, like I said, hanging out with friends absolutely can be a portion of your self-care plan as long as it's not the only thing. Professional, I think for you guys, professional may be, you might have a job, but also relate to school. For this, I think of things like setting boundaries and maybe setting boundaries with family and friends around what courses you're going to take, purposefully taking classes that you want to take, even if maybe that art history class is like random and silly and not anything you're actually going to do, or going into the major that you want, even if somebody in your life is pushing you towards another major, it's okay. It's part of your self-care plan to say, I really don't want to be pre-med. I really am more interested in XYZ. And so following those parts of you. And then there's psychological self-care, which might be journaling. It might be going to counseling. It might be thinking, trying to think about positive memories when you're struggling. So all of these parts add up to be self-care. And on a daily basis, I want you to incorporate many of those things. Not like two, but many, so that if you get sick, if you have a fight with a friend that has been part of your self-care plan, if you struggle in a class, that no one piece drops and hurts so bad that you fall into a depression, right? Not that a self-care plan will totally prevent depression, but it will help. It will help you get through moments where you're struggling. But it is important that when one thing falls apart, that you have other areas where you're still getting that nourishment and that fulfillment. And then the other part of a self-care plan is knowing what works for you when you struggle and having a plan for how you're going to cope. Because the unfortunate truth is that we're all going to have moments where things get incredibly stressful. I think that anxiety, depression, even suicidal thoughts are much more common than most people talk about it. We talk about like these are a problem, like these are like hush hush things. And in reality, I think most people experience those things at some point in their life. And so instead of just saying like, I'm going to have the perfect self-care plan and then I won't struggle with any mental health concerns, that might be very unrealistic. But saying I have this self-care plan that helps me experience those mental health concerns less often. And when I start to struggle, I know what my plan is, whatever that looks like for you. I know for me, one of my personal things that I know when things are really difficult is exercising. I honestly don't exercise much on a regular basis, but I know that when things are stressful, that's really good for me. So when the lockdown happened last year, the first thing I did was pick up the phone and call a colleague, somebody that I know that's a personal trainer. And I said, hey, I think I need to bring exercise back before I struggle. And so we did Zoom exercise sessions for several months so that I was implementing my plan because I know from years of self-reflection what works for me. So I encourage you to ask yourself, like, in times past when I've struggled, what has helped? If you don't know the answer because when you've struggled it has felt so unbearable, or because really like you're this year facing some of the most difficult challenges of your life, then I want you to experiment with it and knowing that things that normally work for you, you might have to kick into overdrive right now. Normally you might be able to just get by with sleeping when you sleep, but right now you may need to be very purposeful about your sleep. If you're struggling, you may need to reach out for support, and knowing what that looks like. I don't know about you, but I have some friends that are really good for different things. And so knowing that, this friend might be great for hanging out with, but when I'm really struggling and I really need someone to just listen, like this friend is a little bit better to talk to. And so embracing whatever that is for you, like those parts of your life where you know that you need to shore things up a little bit more when you're struggling, even trying some different things, knowing what you're going to prioritize, knowing what you might need to take off your plate. Knowing that once in a while it might be self-care to drop a class or even have to take a semester off. Starting therapy is an excellent example of this, knowing that this might be a time in your life where therapy is needed. Not that you're going to have to be in therapy 5 times a week for the next 4 years. I'm really exaggerating. I promise most people are not in therapy 5 days a week, although it is possible. There are people that do, but most people aren't. But knowing that there might be times in your life where that sort of support is helpful, or maybe you don't go to church regularly, but you have in the past, and maybe that's really helpful in times of stress, or knowing, like me, exercise, whatever it is, know these various areas of your life that you're going to shore up on self-care on a regular basis to create a life that generally feels good. And then also knowing what's the backup plan when times get stressful, not if, when times get stressful, what additional supports do I need to put in place for myself and my life? And if you start doing that now, like I said, it evolves over the years. Certainly has evolved for me what I consider self-care. But if you are willing to start developing these habits and start thinking about self-care this intentionally now, then that's something that you can take with you over the years. And when those stressors come up in life, you're more equipped to handle it and come out stronger because of it. So if you do think that therapy might be something that would be helpful for your self-care right now, the good news is that Columbia, Missouri has a variety of mental health resources. At Aspire Counseling, we have several therapists who work with college students every single day because we know this is a unique time in your life. And so you're welcome to reach out to us or any of my colleagues in our local community. Thank you.